Hello children. We are going to begin with chapter 2 from the first unit of our Sunday school textbook, and the chapter is titled The Lord Calls Moses. I am Mina Mathew and I will be conducting your class for today. Now children, let us see what this chapter is related to. Okay? In this lesson, we will know that all of us are born for various purposes, and so it was for Moses. The Lord calls us for following his purposes. He calls us, meaning he will let us know when it is time for us to work for him. The Lord will call us, and so that we follow and fulfill his purposes. We need to respond to and obey the Lord's call and surrender ourselves to him. And whenever we get to know that we are being called by the Lord, we need to surrender. That is, we need to give ourselves totally to God and his plans. God has plans and expectations about our lives. So we must remain powerfully vigilant to listen to that call. Vigilant meaning we must constantly be alert. We must, know our surroundings, and we must be able to see that, and hear whenever God calls us. When we obey the call, we would become useful to many others, just like Moses, who became the deliverer of the Hebrews. So we have already heard about Moses. We have read about him and how Moses had become a prince of the Egyptians. He lived like an Egyptian prince, and yet he gave up all the luxuries of the palace and he worked for bringing the Israelites out of Egypt. So he obeyed God's call, and we too, like Moses, should become useful to many others. We remember that Moses had fled from the palace. He had refused to be called the Pharaoh's son, and so he fled from the palace of the Pharaoh and started looking after the flock of Jethro. Jethro was the priest of Midian, so he started looking after the flock meaning the sheep. Okay, so when the sheep are there in a big herd, we call it a flock. So he began looking after the flock that belonged to Jethro. He married Zipporah, who was the daughter of Jethro. He lived in Midian for 40 years as a shepherd. If we recall, we had read that when Moses was in the palace, he lived in the palace also for 40 years. And now here, his life after that, his life that he lived in Midian was again for 40 years as a shepherd. And this job enabled him to learn patience and concern for the poor and the oppressed. As a shepherd, he learned that he had to be patient. Sheep, they keep running around here and there. And as if you have to be a good leader, you need to have patience. So when Moses became a shepherd, he was learning the early lessons of patience. He learned the early lessons to lead the people of God while he was tending the flock of sheep. So while looking after the sheep of Jethro, he was also being taught or given the early lessons of taking care of the people of Israel. Now it so happened that one day when Moses went up to Mount Horeb with his flock, he saw a strange sight. Strange sight? Something which was unusual. And what was that sight? A bush of thorns was on fire, but the flames didn't burn it. Yes, astonishing fact. Anything that is on fire gets burnt. But here, this bush was on fire, but the flames were not burning the bush. What Moses saw was very different from the common forest fires he was used to. We all know that in a forest, at times, fires crop up. But this fire was totally different from the forest fires that he had seen. He went near the flames out of his curiosity. He heard someone calling him Moses, Moses, from the bush of thorns. What a astonishing thing, an interesting thing. He goes there to find out what was going on in that bush. Why was that bush not burning? And when he goes closer, he hears his own voice, his own name being called out by this voice, and the voice was calling Moses, Moses. He also heard a voice say, "Take off your shoes, for you are standing on holy ground." And that voice instructed him to take off his shoes. And what was the reason? The reason was that he was standing on holy ground, sacred ground. The voice also said, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Now Moses was afraid to look. He heard the voice and he realized that this was God speaking to him, and he was afraid to look at God. The voice of God instructed him to change his ways and to tread a new path. The voice told him that he needed to change his kind of life and he had to walk a new path. It also commanded Moses to tell the people of Israel that I am has sent him to them. Now look how God, by using this name for himself, the name that God gave himself is I am. So it shows the omniscient, the all-pervading power of God, that God is present everywhere. Okay? That God is not just something of the past. He is there in the present and he is there in the future. That is what he meant by saying that I am has sent him to them. And this statement reveals the eternity of the Lord, that God is there forever. So the eternal part of God is seen through the statement, I am. The Lord was moved to pity by the sufferings of his chosen people. So he chose Moses to deliver them from the Egyptians and take the people to the land of Canaan, which was flowing with milk and honey. So this was the task that God had entrusted to Moses. The task that God gave Moses was to deliver the Israelites from the Egyptians. And Moses had to take these people to the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan is known as the promised land. It is also known as the land which was flowing with milk and honey. God sent Moses to the Pharaoh with a demand to let the Hebrews go out of Egypt. The Hebrews is another word for the Israelites. So God sent Moses to the Pharaoh with the demand that he should let the Israelites leave Egypt. God did not want the Israelites to be working there as slaves anymore. They had been tortured for over 400 years, and now God had heard their cries, asking for mercy. And so this is the reason why Moses was sent to the Pharaoh, so that he could ask for the release of the Israelites. The Lord sent Moses as his ambassador, and he gave Moses 3 miracles to be performed before the Pharaoh. First, God commanded Moses to throw his shepherd's rod on the ground, and when he threw it down, it became a serpent. A serpent meaning a snake. Okay, so that rod became a snake when he threw it down on the floor. And when he took it back, it again became a rod. So, and when he picked up the snake, it became a rod. It became the shepherd's staff again. God then commanded Moses to place his hand inside his robe near the chest. The robe is the clothes that he was wearing. So God then told Moses to place his hand inside his clothes. The hand turned white with leprosy. So the color of the hand changed and became white, as it happens when you have leprosy. When he placed the hand next to the chest once again, it became normal. And the miracle was that when he placed his hand again inside his chest, it became normal. So this is not something which could happen. No one, a leper who could not cure himself. But here was Moses who could, who was given the liberty to do this, and this was the second miracle. Moses then performed a third, and this was, he took water from the river Nile and poured it on the ground upon God's command. So God commanded him to take the river water and pour it on the ground. And guess what happened? It turned into blood. So the water of the river Nile that was poured onto the ground there, it turned into blood. So Moses got this opportunity to perform these miracles as God had commanded. But he was able to do so only because God had given him the power to do so. But there was a little weakness that Moses had. He had a speech impediment. Speech impediment meaning that he was not good at speaking. He would stammer when he would speak. So he pleaded with God. He requested God, "Oh Lord, I am just not a good speaker." So he told that he could lead his people, but then he did not have the courage or the power to talk and instruct his people because he was not a good speaker. The Lord heard his request and he appointed Aaron. Aaron was the elder brother of Moses. He appointed Aaron as the assistant to Moses. God also told him, "I will help you to speak well and I will tell you what to say." So God did not let Moses go alone. God was always there with him, and God told him that I will help you to speak well and I will also tell you what you have to say. And then Moses accepted his appointment as the one to deliver the Hebrews from the Egyptians' bondage. So when God took away his speech impediment, Moses was ready to accept his appointment as the deliverer of the Jews. So children, let us now come to this memory verse, which is given in St. Mark chapter 1 verse 17, and it says, "Follow me and I will make you become fishers of men." The Lord says that if we surrender ourselves to Him, He will help us become great. He will help us fulfill whatever He has desired of us. We may be weak in many ways, like Moses. Moses did not have the courage to speak. He used to stammer, but God gave him the power to speak. God gave him the power to lead his people. So that is what he says, "If you follow me, I will make you become fishers of men." So children, let us remember to be vigilant to the Lord's call and to surrender ourselves to Him. We need to be alert to the call of the Lord. Whenever the Lord calls us and He wants us to work for Him, we should be alert to that call and we should be ready to surrender, meaning giving ourselves totally to God. He has created us with a purpose. So let us respond to God and obey His will. So children, each one of us has been created with a purpose. Big or small, that does not matter. But our lives have a purpose. And so it is for us to respond to that call of God and to obey His will. So children, we will learn to remember to hear the Lord's call and to surrender ourselves whenever we are called by Him. I'll now end this chapter here. Thank you.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.